welcome to SigmaCast. My name's Billy Vasily, and today on the podcast I have Deborah James.
Hi, Bill. Great to be here.
Thank you. Deborah has been practicing astrology for over 30 years. She's a Reiki level 1 and 2 healer, an iridologist, the study of the iris. She's a landmark education graduate and a Centrepoint graduate. She has studied and graduated in past life therapy and deep memory process with Patricia Walsh of Woolga Training International, past life regressions. She has a special interest in unlocking traumas and gifts of the past to transform the now through deep understanding of your soul patterns through your individual natal chart. Deborah is my personal astrologer. She's helped guide me in my life and spiritual journey, and I have gratefully benefited from her divine skill set. So today we're going to be doing a little introduction onto astrology, Astrology 101.
Okay, so would you like me to just start with a really basic way to remember all the signs and what they're for?
Perfect.
Okay, so let's start with Aries, which is the first house and the first sign. And it's the ram and it's a fire sign. And it is I want, because Mars rules it. So anyone who's Aries is going to be like a match. That's how you remember it. It's a fire sign, so when a match is struck, it sparks a fire, and that's the beginning of something. So Aries is the beginning of something. In the Northern Hemisphere, it's the beginning of spring, and that's why they call it the beginning of the astrological year is the spring equinox, which is the birth of Aries. Okay?
Aries.
So Aries is the ram.
Aries the ram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ruled by Mars, I want, and I'll go and get it. And I'm a pioneer, and that's how you remember Aries. Taurus is next, and Taurus is an earth sign, and Taurus is like your garden outside. It feeds you and grows, and it's ruled by Venus, which is beauty and love, and also, vengeful at times. Venus has two sides to her. But it's basically the earth and your body and what you want and how you value life. And it's the second house. So it rules the second house. Then we go to Gemini, and Gemini is the twins, and it's an air sign, and it represents brothers and sisters.
My mum's a Gemini.
Yeah.
Two-faced.
Can be. There's two sides to everything, and they argue with themselves. But the thing you've got to remember about Gemini is that Gemini is always wanting to find the other. So they feel like they're lonely on their own. And what they really have to do in a spiritual sense is to find their higher self. To become complete, a Gemini has to sort of fall in love with themselves first. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Well, my mum's been on this spiritual journey and she's actually been finding herself, and it's really good to see.
Yeah.
She's come a long way.
And they're thinkers. It's ruled by Mercury. So it's, when Mercury's retrograde, they go a bit cray-cray. And they have to think about something. How do you feel about that, Gemini? I'll think about that. So they're very, very in their heads, and they have they overthink a lot of things. And they're always trying, it's about communication too, so they're always trying to be understood. They're always trying to find someone who will actually get them. And a lot of them have issues with communicating and being heard and being understood. And the major complaint is, you don't understand me. Listen. That sort of thing. Cancer's next, which is the fourth house, the home, the mother, the moon. And what can we say about Cancerians? They're like crabs, aren't they? They're represented by the crab.
Yep.
And the crab is about survival. How I like to look at a Cancerian is it's a water sign. It's the first of the 3 water signs, and it's like a swimming pool. So it can be beautiful to look at, contained, but very high maintenance. So that's a little bit about Cancerians.
I'm a Cancer rising.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah.
Are you high maintenance, Bill?
I wouldn't really say that.
They move with the moon. So the moon changes signs every 2 to 2.5 days. So you can, if you got yourself a moon diary as a Cancerian, that'd be very helpful. And then you follow the path of the moon. Because some days you'll be feeling really great and then you wonder why you're feeling really bad the next day. And your moods and emotions can go with the moon. So it's really important to know what the moon's up to. Full moons, eclipse moons, all that sort of stuff can be really affect both the Cancer sun, moon and ascendant people.
It's interesting.
So you sort of flow with your moods, do you?
Yeah, I think every time there's a full moon I go a bit crazy, but other than that.
Well, that's where lunatic came from.
Yeah, lunar.
The lunar.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we come to Leo, which rules the 5th house, and that's the 2nd fire sign. So if we thought...
Leo the lion.
Yes, ruled by the lion. Leos need to find courage in their life. You know, everyone says, oh, Leo's got a really big ego. Yeah, that's right. But they have to have the courage to use that ego. And they're very creative and very dramatic. But if you think about it, they're very, they can be someone's best friend too. They're very loyal. So, and I like to think of them as the hearth of the home. Like you've got Aries that is the match that you first strike. And then you've got Leo as the fire burning at home. So it's warming and friendly and, yeah, high maintenance, but warming and friendly as well. Yeah, Leos need to find their strength and courage, and in order to be their original self, you know, they're the star of the show.
It's a very powerful sign. I've got a lot of good friends that are Leos, and I can see that they have harnessed that courage.
Yeah, and it's different for male Leos to female Leos too, because if you look at a pack of lions, the male lion sort of just lies about and is a bit lazy. So it takes a bit longer for them to show their courage, whereas the females are real go out. You know, they'll go out and get it. But it still takes courage. A lot of young girls, especially young Leos, have trouble with self-worth, and that can be an issue, finding the courage to be their own person. And then you go to Virgo, which rules the 6th house, and Virgo is an earth sign, but it's ruled by Mercury. So if you think about Earth being the body and being 3D and in the body, and then Mercury being the mind, you've got someone who might overthink things and then cause issues with their body. So that can be a problem. It rules the 6th house of health and well-being and everyday habits. So for a Virgo to be happy, they love a list.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they love a list, and they like to fulfill that list. They can be, people say that Virgos can be a bit critical. They can be, but they're mostly critical of themselves first before they'll project it. Virgos are the last of the sign underneath the horizon in the birth chart. So underneath the horizon is all about the development of the individual human. Above the horizon is you're giving it out to others, because the 7th house is Libra, which is the balance, which is the other, which is the partner. So you're then looking for somebody to mirror. And so you go from Virgo and then you jump into Libra, which is, I've learnt all these things, these skills along the way. Now I'm going to share that with a partner, or try and find a partner to mirror back to me what I haven't learnt yet. So Libra is an air sign, but it's ruled by Venus. So it's about aesthetic beauty.
Aesthetic beauty. Libras. For some reason, I get along really well with Libras.
Yeah.
Being a Sagittarius, I've
That's
got
right.
many friends that are Libras.
Well, Libra's an air sign, and air, elementally, fire requires air
To make it bigger.
to make it bigger
Yeah.
and to make it better. So you do need air friends around you. If you've got too many water friends, they'll put you out.
Yeah, I gravitate towards air
Yeah.
energies these days. I notice it's true. It works.
It is interesting. It's about balance, but the worst thing about a Libra is if she's out of balance or he's out of balance, they become the worst of their opposite. So they become very self-sourcing Aries, and rather than fight like an Aries, they will be or tend to be a little bit passive aggressive. So you've got to watch the balance. When you see an unbalanced Libra, you just okay. Obviously, they need a little bit of loving.
Yeah, everybody does.
It's true. It's true. And then you got Scorpio, the 8th house. The 8th house is the house of irrevocable change. And if you know a Scorpio, you're going to be irrevocably changed just by hanging around with them. They're a water sign, but they're fixed water, which is like ice.
That makes sense.
So it's like the Iceman cometh. It's like a massive iceberg. You only get to know the really tip of the Scorpio.
Yeah, there's so much else going on.
That's
but
right.
They don't open up.
They don't share. Trust is a real big issue for Scorpios. And they're here, they incarnate in this lifetime to know and understand trust. Therefore, they must be betrayed at some point. So if you've got anything in Scorpio, you will be betrayed at some point, and that is your lesson in Earth School, to learn to trust again. So that can be a bit tricky.
It's deep.
It's very deep. Well, it's an iceberg, so it's huge, and it's hard to stand on, and it's hard to be around, and it's difficult. It's like the ice at the back of the fridge. You've got to clean it out sometimes. Scorpios don't like to hear that, but They've seen a lot in past lives. Usually if you incarnate as a Scorpio, you've seen and gone through a lot of trauma. So you've got to deal with that in the 8th house with a deep, intimate sexual partner usually. And it comes through the family houses as well. So that's like a family lineage. So there's a lot, Scorpios do get the stick at times. And, of course, then you get to Sagittarian and all you want to do is get on your horse and ride away.
Tell me about it.
And that's like a wildfire. You know how we had the match and then we had the home fire and hearth, and then there's the wildfire. So the Sagittarian, they're great. They have trouble finishing things. They just like to burn it out. So that's the issue with the Sag. Sages can burn themselves out.
I'm working on it.
They're usually very jovial and very happy, and they rule the 9th house of higher learning. So they're into spirituality and university degrees and all those things where people are like, oh, yeah, I need to learn that. It's like Earth School on steroids is the 9th house.
Makes sense. While I'm always doing something new. I never stop. I'm always learning
You're
something.
always learning, and you always will want to learn. Yeah. And then you jump into Capricorn, which is the next sign, which is like, okay, I've learnt all that. So what am I going to do? How am I going to make something of it? And that's That's an earth sign. That's like, I've got to feel it, touch it, own it. And it's like the mountain. I've got to climb it. But it's like once I've climbed that mountain, whatever it is for me personally, it's like money, business, all of those sort of tangible things, buying a house, doing all that sort of stuff. Once I've got that, what do I then do with that? And that's ruled by Saturn. So it's like, I've got to teach it. I've got to help other people with it. You know, Saturn gets a bad rap. Saturn's father time. Saturn returns are pretty difficult usually because that's when you grow up. At 29 to 31, you grow up, usually have kids, get married, buy houses, that sort of thing. That's your Saturn return obstacle, and that's very Capricorn. But it can be the greatest teacher.
Well, I did notice when I went through my Saturn return, there was a lot was going on, and I remember you consulted me and you helped me through it.
Yeah.
And
it's very helpful because all these things come in, you know, like the Jupiter, which ruled the Sagittarius, that's a 12-year cycle. So we grow every 12 years. We learn something new every 12 years. But with the Saturn return, it's more solidified. And then you jump into Aquarius, which is an air sign, but it's like outer space air sign.
yeah, it's very interesting because Aquarius, you'd automatically think that it's a water sign, but it's the water pourer.
Yeah, so it's holding the emotions, water, and pouring them out, but using the intellect. It's a very Uranian. It's ruled by Uranus and Saturn. Like the old ruler was Saturn, but the new ruler is Aquarius, which is Uranus, which is like the highest octave of Mercury, which is like the download from the universe. So when you're keyed into Uranian things, you can get the download from the universe, and that's why Aquarians are sort of that little bit detached and spacey type. I call them Dr. Spocks.
Bit airy-fairy.
Well, not even. They're just like, oh my God, they live on another planet, you know.
I can see that. I know a few Aquarians.
Yeah. They're great people to have around, and they're very
100%, a lot of fun.
They love to have fun.
Yeah.
It's Aquarius rules the 11th house of hopes and wishes and friends and big communities, so they're always involved in alternative community ideas and freedom. They love freedom. Uranus loves freedom. So whenever you're in a freedom conversation, there'll be an Aquarian or someone with Aquarian planets that you're talking to.
That's super interesting. We've there's one more, isn't there?
Pisces.
Yes.
Pisces is the two fishes, and it's water again. So we had the swimming pool and the iceberg, and now we've got the ocean. So it can be calm and flat and lovely on one day, and it can be a tsunami on another.
My dad's a Pisces.
There you go.
I can very
but
much relate
it's
to that.
dualistic. There's two fish, so there's two minds as well. You said your mum's Gemini, your dad's Pisces. There's this duality thing going on.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But Pisces is it's hard to capture because it's everything. It's ruled by Neptune, which is sort of ineffable. You can't hold it. You can't capture it. It's an underwater conversation. You might not be able to completely understand it. It's very mystical. These are the people who go into a meditative state and download everything and then are able to articulate it or not out into the world. It's about letting go. It's the final sign. So it's like it's been all the way around the zodiac and it knows everything about every single sign, and it just sort of can utilise all of them really at any particular point in time. And it can be hard to get to know from other people because it's, calm one day, rough the next.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a moon, Pisces moon, so I can kind of relate to that a little bit. But what are the moons? Like the moons and the risings? I don't think many people understand about those.
Okay, well, I just described the sun signs and the houses and what the really basic meanings are.
Yeah.
But then you add that to your emotional life, and a lot of people call the moon the soul. So a Pisces soul has come in very sensitive and mystical, with a Sagittarian sun that's going to learn everything about what it needs to know in Earth School, and then share that with everyone and let that go. The ascendant, being Cancerian, is going to try and hold on a little bit. Put it in its shell, keep it to itself. Yeah. So, yeah, that's good.
And the houses.
Well, that starts with the ascendant, so it's the time you're born stipulates the different ascendant that you might have. But if you think of the astrological chart as a clock, a 24-hour clock, you'd have the midheaven, the 10th house cusp at the top of the chart, which is midday. And midnight would be 6 o'clock, and 6 in the morning would be the ascendant, and 6 at night would be the descendant of the chart, which then puts the 12 houses into play. So, for instance, if someone was born at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, just by knowing that, you could say, okay, well, and they were a Libra, for example, and they were born at 4 in the afternoon, their sun would be in the 8th house. And they would probably have a Pisces ascendant. Pisces or Aries, depending on whether it was 4 or 10 past 4, daylight savings, not daylight savings. But roughly in your head, you can then place the planets around the chart and go, oh, okay, so that person's very sensitive and has a beautiful outlook on life. But 8th house will have a very changed life and quite intense, because it's the Scorpio house, even though it's a Libran person. So there's a lot of complication to astrology, and you're always learning, and it's mathematical and it's observational, and there's a lot of things involved with it. So it's not just, like the sun sign astrology of the papers or the TikTok people.
Yeah, the TikTokers. They're popping up everywhere these days.
Well, everyone's got a phone.
Yeah.
Everyone can say anything they want.
So what are your thoughts on these new age TikTok influencers popping up everywhere?
Well, I'd like them to actually have some knowledge, to do some 9th house work, rather than be a 3rd house. The TikToker is a 3rd house. It's like, let's get the communication out, Gemini. Let's just do. Yeah. It's 5 seconds. It'll go here. It'll go there.
Trending.
It's not your 9th house of knowledge, of real understanding. And yeah, it gets a lot of attention, but I don't know if it's good or bad for us astrologers who've spent, decades working on our craft, to then be usurped by someone who says, oh my God,
It's been doing it for 3 months.
Mercury's retrograde. What does that mean? Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, would be annoying. Yeah. When starting your journey into astrology over 30 years ago, what was it like?
Well, I was conceived astrologically. My mother was an astrologer, so
wow,
it's been longer than 30 years. I started off, going to the Theosophical Society in Melbourne as a small child, listening to old ladies talk about Herschel. And Herschel was the original name for Uranus. So it's been a long time. So it's sort of a language that I've grown up knowing from day dot.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
Didn't know that.
But when I did start studying it, I started, I suppose, in the early 80s. I went to an actual school to get a certificate, and my teacher at that time didn't want it to become popular because she was using it to gamble with. And she was winning lots of money at the racetrack.
To gamble with. Wow.
Yeah, I know. There's lots of different ways you can use astrology. I never went down that path, but she was quite a lucky Jupiterian person and decided to use it that way. And
well, why not if it works?
Exactly.
Wow, that's it. Well, Olga's doing some pretty cool things.
Olga Morales is
That's
the
right.
bomb on financial astrology.
Yeah.
Yes, she is. That's her thing.
And she's doing it for the stock market and cryptocurrencies, and yeah, it's pretty cool. I think she's going to come on soon.
That would be great.
Yeah.
She'd love that.
Yeah. What is the difference? Oh, what were the mainstream views of astrology back then? Like when you were young?
Oh. Nutty.
Yeah.
You're a nutter or a witch. Or it was very shush, you know. People meeting in there either at the TS or at people's homes. There wasn't much in this country about it. In Europe, you can take astrology at a university degree. So,
Wow.
Australia's a bit backward as far as that's concerned.
We've always been a bit backwards, I reckon.
Yeah, well, we were a penal colony. Still are.
Yep.
Melbourne,
Nothing's
hello.
changed. Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Is there a difference between Vedic astrology and Western astrology?
Yeah, I don't do Vedic astrology. It's very complicated. A friend of mine does it.
Yep.
It has a lot to do with the gods. So they have a lot of different spaces for the gods. They use a different way to put up the chart, different mathematics. And strangely enough, it both works. It's just not something that I'm trained in.
Okay. Is it like the Indian gods and all that kind of stuff? So it's just like mainly for India.
Well, there are a lot of people that are using it now, Western, but very few that do Western and Vedic.
Okay.
You stick to what you know.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and your system of preference is Western.
Evolutionary, Western evolutionary.
Western evolutionary.
So I'm looking at the chart from an evolutionary perspective. What's your highest? Can you operate your particular chart at its highest octave for your evolutionary growth in this incarnation? That's how I look at it.
That's pretty epic.
It can be.
How long do you reckon astrology's been around for?
Well, since human beings thought about looking up in the sky and seeing something move.
Yeah.
They've gone, oh, look at that. Wow. When that happened last time, the king died. And now the king's died again. So maybe, that means that particular thing means that the king will die. So I think it's been around a long time.
Same. Like millennia, like super old.
Yeah, and you know, how long have we been around? A lot longer than people think we have.
Yeah, I feel like we're a species with amnesia, like Graham Hancock talks about.
Well, I think there's been many types of human beings over many different millennia. I mean, having been to Egypt and been inside the Great Pyramid, it's got a waterline in it. It was underwater for a long time.
Yeah, wow.
So
what do the Egyptologists say? 4,000 years ago?
Well, yeah, blah blah. lot longer than that.
Yeah. Some geologists are saying that it's between 18 to 36,000 years old, but it could be even older than.
Could be.
Yeah. 36,000 plus years old.
When I was in there, I heard whale songs, so that's how old it was.
Jesus.
It's been underwater. Yeah.
Wow. Because I think about 16,000 years ago, it was like subtropical, kind of like the Amazon, you know, like the Sahara was.
Well, the Nile came right up to it, and from just my intuition and being inside of it, it's been underwater. So who knows?
You got to actually sit in the sarcophagus and do a meditation
I
and bring
did.
your crystals in.
I
there.
did.
That's pretty
Yes.
epic.
It was
How was
pretty
that?
epic. Fantastic, yes. Most amazing journey.
And you just fitted it in before COVID too.
Yes. Yes, we were on the last plane out of Cairo. There's a book. And the day after it was declared a pandemic. Plandemic.
Good timing. Yeah.
Was very good timing. And we knew that because that was the day that Saturn ingressed into Aquarius. So we knew that something was coming. Now, the negative of Aquarius can be very restrictive. It can be social distancing. Keep away from me. Don't come near me. Very detached. And that's what we saw.
Big time.
We saw stern Saturn, the teacher, saying, don't come near me. And it's going to be very interesting when Pluto does the same thing next year.
Ah.
So we're going to see the beginning of something else
Really?
new and different.
And what's the characteristics of Pluto compared to?
Well, Pluto is an 8th house subject, so it's irrevocable change. And the word irrevocable means that you don't go back.
Yeah.
And it's...
That's a heavy word then.
Yeah, and it's death and rebirth, which is 8th house as well. So it's the death of something and the rebirth of something else. So you could say that it was we're going into a period of something we haven't been through before in our lifetime.
God, and I thought we went through a lot in the last 2 years.
Nah, buckle up.
Buckle up, buckaroo. I wanted to talk a bit about plant medicine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, something that we both have in common.
Favourite subject.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on plant medicine and the ability to heal past traumas?
I think plant medicine is amazing as far as that's concerned. I also think it's a great healer, but I also believe that it heals you depending on what you can handle. For instance, I had a friend of mine sit with me during a session, and what got healed in her was the relationship between her and her daughter. But she hadn't done any actual 9th house Sagittarian work on herself. And from that perspective, she just went in there and saw the relationship between her daughter and how she could heal it. And then rather than keep that as an insight, she actually came out and did the work to heal the rift between her and her daughter, which was fantastic. So I think it's individualised. I think the medicine actually speaks to you personally as to what you need to heal yourself in your journey.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it will show you what you're ready to see.
Yeah, and each person is different.
Yep.
And depending on their level of evolution, that's what they get.
Yeah.
Which can be frustrating at the soup afterwards because some people fall asleep and do nothing.
I fell asleep on the first time and missed the soup. And I woke up and I'm like, is there any soup left? Oh, damn it, I missed it.
Missed the soup.
And I made sure the next day I got the soup. Yeah, I strongly believe that, you know, like if you go in there with an intention.
You have to have the intention.
And you really kind of like work on what you want to get out of it and the questions that you want to ask Mother Ayahuasca.
And she's a living, breathing thing.
100%.
It's not.
100%.
It's not a. a drug, like manufactured drug. It's a being, and you're inviting that being into you.
Yeah.
And no fear factor. Don't be frightened.
You have to surrender. That's one of the most important things.
And that's where the Pisces comes in, the ability to surrender. Because Pisces loves to surrender to the mystic.
I remember on the first time I was just saying I surrender, like straight up. And she started working her magic. And,
very good.
Yeah, very important to...
I don't think it's for everybody. I think that, you have to have a certain understanding of, magic, possibility, mystic.
Definitely.
To get the most out of it, for sure.
Yeah, definitely not for everybody.
No.
Especially if people are having, like pharmaceutical medication and stuff like that.
Well,
it's not ideal.
I was listening to a guy the other day on the radio who was talking about the fact that they wanted to, introduce psychedelics and ayahuasca as part of a therapeutic for addiction and other things in Melbourne. And they were going to do it in a hospital setting, and they were going to do it with therapists, and they were going to do...
Make sure there's buckets and toilets close by.
But the thing that I don't understand is that the way it's been done forever is a communal thing.
Of course.
And it's with the shaman who journeys with you,
exactly,
with the medicine. So you can't have like a completely... someone sitting there with a clipboard going, listen, how are you feeling now? That is not going to work.
Everything's sterile, white.
I got really angry. I thought, that's not going to work. And to think that they could possibly create a synthetic ayahuasca so that it was all the same and all safe and had the same effect as that's not going to happen either.
That just pisses me off.
They just really have no idea.
They've got no clue.
None.
No, they don't. And whatever they're trying to get out of it, it won't work.
No.
Yeah, look, Dr. Rick Strassman did a intravenous DMT study, and he was giving people DMT, diluted DMT through intravenous, the thing.
Drip,
yeah, through a drip. And I'm currently reading a book about it now. The people were, they were going deep into just different realms, just in and out of different realms. And like you said, they're in a bed in an institutionalized kind of setting. Everything's white, it's, on Joe Rogan.
It's artificial.
It's artificial.
Yeah.
It's
controlled. You can't control nature in ayahuasca. You
No.
can't control the mother like that.
No.
She's wild. She's a bit Venusian, I think.
Yeah, definitely. The amount of ego death that I've had with ayahuasca,
it's about letting go.
Yep.
And, not controlling. I don't think you can bring Saturn into the situation. I think it's all Neptunian, Piscean, Jupiterian experience. I don't think you can. I don't think Saturn belongs there. Just saying.
Tell me about your most profound experiences working with plant medicine.
Well, the very first time I did plant medicine, I wasn't scared. I went up to the shaman who had said earlier when we went around the room with our intentions, please let me know that if you're a newbie when you come to get the medicine. So I thought, okay, so I went up there and I said, yes, I'm a newbie, first time. And he took a look at me and he looked up and down my body and he gave me a full cup, and then he reached underneath his little altar and got another bottle of something else and half filled the cup again and gave me that. And I said, but I'm a newbie. And he just looked at me and he said, you can handle it and you need it.
Wow.
And I'm like, wow, I wonder what that's about. And, of course, everybody else in their line didn't get the second little drink from underneath the altar. So they were a bit
Something
like,
special.
how come you got that and we didn't?
Why didn't I get that?
And when I tasted it, I thought, wow, I really know this flavour. Like it was almost like a soul memory of I've had this before.
Wow.
So, and most people are like, oh, it's foul tasting. To me, it wasn't foul tasting. To
The
me,
other one, the one that was half a cup.
No, both.
Oh, both of them.
But it was like, yes, this is good for me. That's how I felt.
Medicine.
It's the medicine. So then when I went and sat down, all of a sudden there were like birds flying around the room, and the room turned into the most amazing temples. And I'm like, oh, this is so cool. And then I saw a lion walking around the room. And it was as if it was like as real as me. But I knew in my head that there was no lion in the room.
It couldn't just manifest itself like that.
Exactly. And there was a monk there who did a fire ceremony to invoke everybody's journey, and the lion sat in front of the monk, and the flames reached the ceiling and turned into the most amazing angels and just flew around the room.
Wow.
And that was all part of my obvious imagination because nobody else was seeing that. And then I closed my eyes, and when the music started, and I was suddenly in a cage. And I thought, well, why am I in a cage?
Yeah.
And then the mother appeared to me as live as me and an inch away from my nose and said, you're very sick. You're not supposed to be sick. We're going to heal you. And I went, oh. And then she came right into my face and then into my body. It was like a shock. And she said, you're not going to move. So all of a sudden she was talking to me telepathically, telling me exactly what was wrong with my body. And then she disappeared she turned into like millions and millions and millions of little tiny ayahuasca ladies, if you like. And they went through my blood and started scraping the insides of my lungs. Now, I was a heavy smoker, Bill. I would smoke 2 packets of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
And she said to me, and I'd had a cough for like 10 years, and she said, you've got a tumour in your lungs. We're going to get rid of the tumour. You just have to sit there. And it was the most excruciating pain next to childbirth that I have ever experienced. It was like these tiny little people had razor blades and they were scraping the insides of my lungs.
Wow.
And out of that, with every breath that I took, which was terribly painful, all this black stuff would come out of my nose and my mouth, and even my eyes was weeping black like tar, and it stunk. Wow. And a lot of people around me were vomiting or going up to go to the toilet. I was in a cage. I couldn't go anywhere. And the way I purged was to breathe. So every breath was painful. So I was just yawning and like expanding my lungs to fit my rib cage, which was the cage that was around me. So it was quite symbolic, the cage. And when I got really, when it was really painful, I'd open my eyes and the lion was sitting right in front of me, like giving me the courage, that, again, a symbol of courage. Yeah. And at one point it got so painful, I said, you have to give me something, because the music's changing all the time, and with each change of the music, there's more going on inside my body. And then the music changed. It was really painful. And I said, please, you have to give me something. I'm really, not coping right now. And with that, she turned my body into a lotus. So I became this lotus flower. My head was the flower, and there was these petals that came out, and each petal was attached to a constellation, and it was just so beautiful. I forgot I was in pain.
Yeah, she's smart like that.
So, absolutely. So I'm like floating around like a flower, thinking this is amazing. And then she said to me, right, we're going to clean your kidneys now because the kidneys are attached to the lungs. And then we're going to clean your bowel. And then we're going to clean, and then you'll be done. And I'm like, oh, this is like 5 hours so far into
not
this
done
experience.
Yet.
Not done yet. And when she got to the kidneys, it was like someone stuck 2 knives in my back and started twisting them. It was so painful. And with that, the shaman's doula walked past me and put her hand on my head and said, you're so brave, you're doing really well, keep going. And then the shaman came over and blew some special tobacco down my back and did something with a feather and moved away.
Yep.
And with that, the pain in the kidneys stopped. And then after that, Mother Ayahuasca said, we're going to clear your bowel now. And you think to yourself, oh, great, I'm dressed in white and I'm going to shit myself.
Lovely.
So I could feel all that going on, and I thought, you know what, it doesn't matter. Like, I just have to let go, right? I have to let go that anyone is even going to know, or that it's going to be humiliating or anything. It's just, this is the process. So I just let go. And then the cage disappeared.
Wow.
And then I'm like, okay, I can go to the toilet now. So I got up and I went to the toilet. And what I found was nothing but pond dirt. As if I was an actual lotus in the pond.
Wow.
So I had passed pond dirt.
That's crazy.
And I thought I was mental. I thought, that is not possible. That's crazy.
Well, when you're in the realm of the mystic, anything is possible.
I know. And that's where I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So then I got up and I looked in the mirror, washed my hands, looked in the mirror, and my eyes were different. So I had 2 completely clear, different coloured irises.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is whack. And I just looked again and I thought, no.
Being an iridologist as well.
I know, it's like, wow, that dark circle's gone. Wow, that's all changed. There was a lot of white in the exterior of the iris, which is like inflammation, but that made sense to me because I was clearly inflamed from what was going on.
Yeah, definitely.
But after that, I thought, wow, what has just happened? So, and then you go through this, that didn't happen. Like, none of that happened. This is like just a whack, ha-ha journey sort of thing. And I'm walking back towards the music from the loo, and these people that I'd met earlier, they're like, oh, Deb, come over, have a ciggy. And my automatic response mechanism was to go for the cigarettes in my pocket and the lighter and have a cigarette. And the mother, who was still inside me, said, are you kidding me? After all that?
After all that I just did for you?
After all that what I just did for you? And it was like a big slap up the back of the head, and then I threw up the most amazing amount of black tar I think you could even, in front of these people who were inviting me over. And I'm like,
smokers area.
Sorry, can't come near you. And I went back in the room and I just sat there and I felt so vulnerable and new and like a small child.
Wow.
Because, why do you smoke in the first place? It's a smoke screen, for something that happened that was traumatic. It's an addiction. So then I'm sitting there going back through all my childhood and why there was this need to create a smoke screen around me. Literally. So, yeah, that was an amazing... I haven't had a cigarette since.
And how many years has that been?
It's coming up to 8 years now. Wow. But the best thing about that was that 3 weeks later I had a dream, and I was sitting at a table at the shaman's house, and I was coughing, and I coughed and coughed and coughed in the dream, and I spat up a tumour the size of my hand. And he looked at the tumour and he said, "Oh, it's done now. You can put it in the bin." And I went, "What?" He goes, "Your healing's done." So in the dream, and it was as if the dream was real, right? So I woke up and I thought, wow, and I could really breathe, and I didn't have a cough, and my eyes had stayed clear and all the rest of it. Anyway, 6 weeks later, I was doing another ceremony at the shaman's house in New South Wales, and it was exactly like my dream. And I'd never been to his house. So I had actually been there in the dream to complete the healing. And it was as if he knew.
Yeah, wow, that's
strange. Super strange.
Yeah.
It was, and that was like, I've had many more experiences.
I don't doubt it.
Than that, but yeah, that one was pretty good for a first time.
Oh, bloody oath. You had a near-death experience during your Saturn return.
Yes. I gave birth to my first child, which is normally what happens around Saturn return. You get responsible.
Yeah, I remember, yeah.
And I had a 5-pint hemorrhage a week after he was born.
Jesus.
And what had happened was the night before I had... because the birth was pretty barbaric, to be honest. I'd broken my pelvis and coccyx during delivery. Didn't get us have a cesarean or anything like that. So a lot of stitches, to say the least, and a lot of aftercare and a lot of no ability to move or, get back to walking even at that point. And I was still looking after this baby, and they'd put me in a room right at the end of the corridor because I was like the bad patient that had all the issues. And once the broken pelvis was diagnosed, they decided to turn me on my stomach for the night and put pillows underneath everywhere, pad me all out, knock me out with drugs so that I could get some proper sleep, align the pelvis, miss out on them like the midnight feed or whatever so that I could sleep right through. Anyway, they gave me the drugs, turned me over, and at about, 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, I woke up and I thought, I've wet the bed. I could feel wet on my chin. It was all wet. I could feel like I was all wet. But I was so tired, I just thought, it doesn't matter. I'm in hospital, I don't care. and that to me, in hindsight, was the life force leaving. It was like, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to go to sleep.
Yes.
And then I woke up and I was above myself talking to my dead auntie. And she said to me, "Oh, you have to go back there. It's not your time." And I said, "What?" She goes, "No, you have to go back. Can you see where your hand is?" And she pointed. My hand was right near the buzzer. She goes, "You're going to have to push that." And I said, "Why?" She goes, I said, "It's so lovely here. Why would I want to go in? Why would I want to go back there?" And then she said to me, "Oh, because your husband can't look after that baby you just had. And you need to look after him." And I'm like, I'd rather stay here with you. So we're having this argument. And she's like, no, go back now. So she sort of pushed me back into my body, and I just put my hand on the buzzer. And the next thing I know, there's lights, camera action. There's 10 people in the room.
Scalpel.
Basically. And what had happened was I had a 5-pint blood hemorrhage. And bled out, basically. And the wetness that I felt on my chin was blood. I was just covered in blood from head to toe.
Far out.
And there was blood all around the floor from where it had just dripped onto the floor. And so, yeah, and they turned me over and they were trying to diagnose me, and I'm laughing. I'm like, I'm not supposed to die. Don't worry about it. I'm going to be fine. It's not my time yet. It'll be all good.
They're all freaking out.
And
probably.
they thought it was a fundus issue, which is when the uterus doesn't clamp down after the birth, and it continues to bleed. But I knew it wasn't. I said, no, it's an episiotomy issue. You need to, that sort of thing. I probably have got a bleeder in there. And I was a veterinary nurse for many years, so I knew my body and I knew the issue that could be happening.
Yep.
So I was articulating that, and they're like, no, you're mad.
God complexes. They all got God complexes.
I know. So then I had to then they got me up to go to the shower because they had to shower me to find out where I was bleeding from. And I'm up and I'm sharing a bathroom with the other lady who was bad as well. She'd had a cesarean and got an infection. Oh. So we were sharing this bathroom, and she'd woken up with all the commotion and the noise and everything, and she'd gone to the toilet. And as they pulled the door back on my side, of course it looked like Dexter had been there. There was just blood everywhere. And I'm sort of being held up by two nurses that are also covered in blood. She's fainted on the floor on a drip stick.
Jeez.
And I just started laughing. I said, this is really funny. This is really funny now. Anyway, they got me all cleaned up and thought that it was my fundus, so they gave me oxytocin, which put me back into labour. So I was like, it was just a nightmare.
Far out.
And then they decided, no, I was right. It was from the episiotomy, so they had to go back in and undo all the stitches and stitch it all back up again. And they needed an emergency signature because they didn't think I was right in the head to be signing for my own well-being. They needed my husband. And my husband was away fishing.
Of course he was.
Of course he was. Sagittarian, see? Off. Too traumatic, I'm gone. So he was unable to come in, so we had to find some half-sister, step-sister person to come and sign for me at 2:00 in the morning.
Wow.
And then I was being wheeled into surgery, and they had to find an anaesthetist. And this was really cracked me up and made me think about how the universe really works, because I was already sort of a little bit freaked out about talking to my dead auntie and having that existential understanding that there is no death. Like, really?
Yeah.
And then sort of lying there, and the anaesthetist comes in and I recognise him. And he was a guy called Dr. Moriarty, who used to do the big apes at the Melbourne Zoo.
What? He used to anaesthetise the big gorillas?
Yeah. And as a veterinary nurse, I would sometimes be called out to help him do that, like in the late 70s, early 80s.
So you knew him?
So I knew him, and I just looked at him and I said, oh, it's you. And he said, you'll be fine. I'm looking after you tonight.
Oh, thank God.
So that was my Saturn return. So near-death experience, but good in the end. Like, you've got your teacher and you've got somebody who you knew recognising you to sort of shepherd you through, both the dead auntie and the anaesthetist.
So interesting. That's a hell of a story.
It's fun, isn't it?
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about past life regression.
Yeah.
And the studies that you did with Patricia Walsh.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
I still do past life regressions. It's not for everybody. Again, a little bit like ayahuasca, because it's a journey. And the first time I did it was because it's somatic. She does it in a somatic way. It's not like a meditation or a guided thing like Brian Weiss used to do. It's actually somatic. You actually see and feel as if you were there.
Wow.
So, and that can be quite traumatic as far as, you know, depending on how you were killed or died in that lifetime that you're going back to recover. And what I discovered was, having done it many, many, many times during the course of my training, over 4 years, is that you have to, each time you go back into a past life, if you consider that there's no time and everything's happening all at once, you're going back to heal that particular part of your soul that was in schism from that trauma. So you heal that. That's an actual healing process. And then because of that, there's more of you present because you're less fractured in a way.
Mm.
So I'll give you an example. I did one client who was having a lot of problem with a rosacea skin rash irritation on her face and neck and upper torso. And she'd gone through to every dermatologist, every doctor, natural doctors, dietitians, everybody to try and fix this really angry rash, which is how you would describe the really angry rash, which was all over her body. And worse at some times, better at some times. But some days she couldn't even go to work because she looked so bad in the mirror. Anyway, we did this regression and she went back to a lifetime where she was burnt as a witch. And the rosacea was an indicator of the burn, where she was burnt, right? But the interesting part about that, the healing part takes part after the death. So she died being burnt, ridiculed and burnt at the stake by a particular person who set fire to her.
Heavily traumatic.
Really,
Super
really traumatic. But you then go to a place called the Bardo where you can recognise the characters that are in that lifetime, and you usually attract the same sort of characters to yourself to learn the lesson, to wake up to the consciousness of that particular lesson. Anyway, turned out that the guy that had set her alight was her current husband. Right? So in this lifetime, and she was not happily married. But she'd been married for a long time. And it was one of those cases where, how do I get out of this relationship? Like, I can't leave, I've got kids. I can't leave, I haven't got enough money. All of that, those sort of things play into it. But what she got to see was that the rosacea had started just after she'd married him. Prior to that, she had no skin issues. So there was this soul connection between the pair of them. But he was still ridiculing her in this life. And when we went to a healing place in the Bardo process of the regression work, and the client then leads the healing. Like, what do you ask the question? What do you see? Oh, I see a rainbow. Oh, it's a rainbow waterfall. And I'm going to go and lie in the rainbow waterfall. And as she did that, in her imagination, talking to me, the rosacea completely cleaned off of her face. She became completely healed from the rainbow waterfall in the Bardo, from that relationship.
That's incredible.
And when she came out of it, like in our conversation afterwards, she's like, I know what I have to do now. I have to leave him. I have to complete it, but without any angst. I have to do it from a soul level of healing. And that was like a miracle. It never came back. So
that's incredible.
And not everyone's like that, but that was just perfect timing. And what I tend to do is if somebody has got a really intense issue like that, I'll pick a day astrologically that works for them and works for me as the facilitator to get the best healing possible for their journey.
Yeah. That's incredible. She healed it by
She healed it herself, yeah.
dealing with what she like that past life lesson or came back to haunt her, but then she had your help to be able to see that and then do something about it, and then as a result it cleared the skin rash
just went away. I watched it. I was in shock.
So while you were watching
I was wishing I was videotaping it, but I didn't have it. Like, we don't have phones or anything when we do this sort of stuff, so it's just work one-on-one with the client.
That's incredible. Got a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
Do you believe that there are whole generations that have been brainwashed by news, social media and radio?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on your generation?
Yes. Well, we grew up with the 6 o'clock news. And we grew up with Brian told me. Brian told me so. I know everything I need to know because Brian told me so. That was a jingle in the 1970s and 80s about the newsreader. Brian told me, Brian told me, Brian told me so. I know everything I need to know. Brian told me so. These days it's Peter Hitchener.
Yeah, he's...
it's like... And we've been groomed to believe whatever they say.
Yep.
And there is no journalism anymore. It's all fake news.
It's almost like they just got a script and they're just reading it, and you can even see from their eyes and their facial expressions.
We're being brainwashed. What Davos wants us to do is 20, 30, own nothing and be happy. Yeah, be slaves and brainwashed is basically the underlying meaning of that sentence.
Definitely. In regards to my generation, I feel like there's just a plethora of information. And there's almost so much information that people are getting mind-fucked.
Well...
So they don't know what to believe. So then they just believe what's trusted, which is similar to your generation.
But, once upon a time, and not too far ago, pre-internet, when you had the phone in the hallway and you had to sit attached to the phone if someone rang you, if someone else had a phone, and I remember those days.
Not many phones.
You'd write a letter, so you'd have to communicate to somebody like we do now in an instant. We'd write a letter and we'd sit and we'd think about it. And we might write it out in our handwriting twice, and then we'd have to take it to the post office, and then we'd have to wait 2 days or something for it to reach whoever the person was, who'd take a couple of days to read it. So there was like a week before you'd get a reply to something that you thought about a lot before you actually put pen to paper. Today's not like that. And us as human beings, which is what our attention spans are getting less and less and less. And we're getting more and more overwhelmed, and our nervous systems are getting a little bit shot. And I think that's why there's a lot of mental illness going on at the moment.
Thank you, TikTok.
Well, thank you, email too, and mobile phone. And everyone's connected all the time.
Yeah, definitely with the attention spans, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Back in the day, you'd be able to read a book. I still read books and stuff, but a general TikTok is about 15 seconds. Well, I think the maximum one's about 3 minutes.
Yeah, so, from your perspective, it'd be interesting to see how many people actually watch the entire podcast.
Yeah, well, we're at an hour and 10 minutes now, so, you know.
That's enough, I think. People won't have enough.
No one's even going to hear this, I reckon.
Exactly.
I had one more question for you, though.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on weather modification?
Yeah. Happens all the time. Has been happening since before Vietnam.
Yeah. There's an act called...
Geoengineering. I've actually got a flight tracker on my phone, and I watch them do it. I watch the planes go up.
I got that app as well.
I watch them go around and around and around and around on a sunny, beautiful, clear sky day, and then they say 2 days' time it's going to be thunder and lightning. Yeah, where'd that come from?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I see these helicopters doing pentagons.
Yeah.
Yeah, what are they doing?
Well, there's all sorts of different things as well. As like there's energy modification.
The rain
weapons.
Yeah.
They're weapons against humanity, and they say it's climate change. They're doing the climate change. The climate has always changed. The earth has always changed. Mother Gaia has always moved and shifted and changed.
Exactly.
But they're just speeding it up for their own agenda. That's where I'll leave that.
2030.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been lovely having a chat to you, and thank you for coming on.
No problem.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. It's been great.
Yeah.
And anybody who wants to get in contact with me, you'll put up some information.
Yeah, I'm going to be chucking your all your information up on the
and I've got some
info.
cards as well that I sell,
cards here.
which are medicine cards, which came to me through my experiences with the mother.
Vina the Mystic.
Yep.
Yeah, they're really cool.
I think so. They were completely and utterly 100% downloaded. And it was obsessive. I had to do it, and then all of a sudden it was done.
I remember when you were doing it, yeah. And your plates as well.
Yeah, I do astrology, Sabian symbol art charts, so you can have your astrology done in the form of a painting.
That's cool. I've seen your work, and it's really, really good, and people are raving reviews, and
people are pretty happy with it, so maybe we'll talk about that next time.
Yeah, definitely. I'd definitely love to have you on again.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you for coming.
No worries.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.